IPMNation.com.
Live from the Transitional Radio Uplink in Cuenca, Ecuador, you're listening to All Natural Being with guest host Henry G. Noel. What's the G stand for? Giddy up on IPMNation.com. Here's Henry.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 341st episode of Brian Brody's All Natural Being, the #1 rated show on IPMNation.com and brought to you by Transitional Radio. We're live this evening on IPMNation.com, AllNaturalBeing.com, and the new Brian Brody app with fly-on-the-wall video on Facebook, YouTube, and rebroadcasts on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and the usual cast of characters. We're broadcasting live this evening from our international uplink studio in Cuenca, Ecuador. And I want to thank our good friends at Wirecast for making it possible for us to be broadcasting globally. I also want to thank you, our trusted listeners, for without you, this would be a rather soul-searching moment, as I find it far more enjoyable having you participating in the thread and sharing your ideas. I appreciate those listening in, all the shares that this broadcast gets, and all the likes offered for this show and our rebroadcasts. I want to thank our listening audience from all over the globe: the United States, Canada, Mexico, the UK and Ireland, our good friends right here in Ecuador, China, the Philippines, Brazil, India, Australia, Germany, Italy, France, Nigeria, Turkey, Japan, Singapore, Thailand, Belgium, Sweden, Israel, South Africa, Egypt, Puerto Rico, Kenya, the Netherlands, Colombia, Peru, Greece, Poland, Cambodia, and New Zealand. And for those of you joining us from all over the globe, welcome. It's great to have you here with us. My name is Henry Noel, guest hosting for the out-of-commission Brian Brody, and I'm thrilled to be filling in for our virtual hitchhiker. So, from our southern garden spot of the mortals, we want you to know your life is still your labyrinth. And you, regardless of what you believe, get to call all the shots. Why subjugate yourself to the whims of others? You were dealt this hand, so why not play it with all the gusto you can muster? And play it the way you want to play it. No one should have more control over your life than you. So why succumb to your critics? Why allow the beliefs of others to derail you from your all-natural being? Don't get caught up in all the BS that others try to feed you. Use your primal scream to stand firm and proud, front and center, and please don't, place yourself on the back burner. That's why we're here, to be your friendly force, to place your heart's highest priority top of the list, reinstating the true wisdom and wallop of your inner whisper, to terminate the turbulence in your life, to garnish the guilt that you hold on to and just won't let go of, and streamline your sensibility so you can face this crazy world head on, all to out-brutal a brutal. And so you can learn how to bring on your own bold, once and for all. Now, I'm trusting everyone's had a good weekend, and I thank you for joining me this evening. So before we delve and dive into the thread, I posted an advance notice of what I thought this show should be about tonight. In case you missed the posting, we are going to discuss life enhancements, ways to improve your life. I chose this because, Brian and we're always talking about, thickening your skin and bringing on your bold and unleashing your legacy, mammaling up, living life like you mean it. So what does all that mean? And how do we do it? So for those who listened in on Thursday, I mentioned that I would rather have a two-way discussion rather than me sit here and preach to you one way. The reason is I learn more from you when you participate. So I will post the topic on Facebook in advance of the show so that you guys can prepare for yourself and get ready for the thread. So let's get into the thread and say hi to everybody, okay? So let's see who's on. Linda, how are you? Good evening. It's great to see you. Rita, hi. Candace, How good to see you. John, welcome, 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 my friend. How are you? David Ray Bowman, thank you, sir, for joining in. My big brother, Wayne, well, actually, he's my little brother, but that's okay. John, it's good to see you. Linda, again. Let's see. So we've got everyone. Being hello. That's it. This is a friendly group, so be there. Talk to each other. It's really a lot of fun to watch. Let's see. We got... Great. I love it. All sorts of... Jack. How are you, Jack? Good to see you. Wow. That is great. Janile. Good evening. How are you doing? Yeah, I thought tonight that I wanted to just bring up ways that we can actually, what we have to do to actually make improvements in our life. That's one of the things that we do. Brian and I, we're real good at pointing out what things have to be changed, what we have to do. Thicken your skin, mammal up or mortal up or however you want to do it. But for John, we're going to be discussing ways to just improve our lives. We talk about being able to mammal up, and we talk about being able to just bring on your own bold. But we want to go in and start defining what some of that is, and give us some ideas, some ways that we can actually do this. Because that's one of the questions I do get. That's all well and good, and I do understand what I have to do, that I have to change, I have to fix this, or I have to think about it differently. But how do I do it? How do I change everything that I've done in my whole life in order to do this? So I thought that maybe we start covering some of this and see how it goes. So if you want, I'll go ahead and bring up the first one. Let's see. It's okay. There you go. Oh, thanks a lot, Janelle. I appreciate that. Bowl of chili. That's really good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and bring up ways that we can improve our lives. And the first one is, one of the greatest stresses that we go through in our lives is dealing with difficult people, obviously. And the reason for this isn't because they think differently than we do or have completely different beliefs than we do. It's because we react to what they say. We defend our position, which fuels conflict. The words or actions of the other person isn't the real problem. It's when we react, defend, or criticize, their words become important. They become powerful. And it's their words or actions that we are creating that way. So part of the reasons is we react. And the more we prove that they're wrong, then that's what creates all this conflict. And it creates the stresses that we live in, because we have to deal with these people. If we stop reacting, we reduce the stresses. We all have people in our lives that want to be right. So let them be right. We don't have to agree with them, and we don't have to prove them wrong. What part of your life will be destroyed because they think they're right? Listen, smile, and move on. This is one way for us to begin to lower the stresses in our lives. Now, hopefully that makes some sense. Candace, thank you. I have things I do that makes my heart feel warm, but yet I do have thick skin. And that's a great combination to have. And I do remember you mentioning having to separate yourself from friends or from people, acquaintances, and people that you used to be very close to, because they simply were either very negative or they were very difficult people to deal with. And I think that this is a very important part of our lives, is dealing with the difficulties that people present to us. And we spend a lot of time in conflict and conflictive modes trying to defend ourselves. But in essence, what we're not really defending ourselves, we're actually trying to prove them wrong. And that is the big issue that I think that we face. I mean, look at all over the country. We face this as a big, big, big challenge. It's really hard for us to understand. We have to take that deep breath. We have to, let them think they're right. It's not going to change my life any, and I don't have to prove I'm right or wrong. It's not my point. I don't have to do that. So I don't tend to have that problem with the difficult people. And the second part of all of this is actually, why hang around difficult people? I mean, when you really look at it, we don't have to do that. Our life is surrounded constantly by difficult people, and so why all of us, all we have to do is the greatest danger of being around difficult people is that we become difficult. We ourselves do. And so and we don't even realize that it actually changes us. So just because you're being polite to a difficult person, it doesn't mean that you have to spend a whole lot of time with them. Love, compassion, kindness, lends themselves to respect. So respect yourself enough to limit the exposure that you have to difficult people and reduce the levels of stresses being around the difficult people, and you can handle that. But the less time you spend around difficult people, the less you have to handle that. So those two in combination really do cause us a bunch of consternation. And if we simply took control of our lives, like we say that in the very beginning, to that it's your life. You were dealt the cards, and you need to play it with all the gusto you can get, because why allow others to mess up your life? We don't need to do that. So this is one of the ways that we can really do that, is really start to understand. Don't let difficult people control you. Don't let them be the one that dictates how your day is going to be or how your moment's going to be. You really need to take your life and run with it, because that's what's so important. That's what we need, and that's what we've been meaning about with the comments and the statements that Brian mentions, that I mentioned, and just go for it. Also, wow, spin on your heels and walk away. You got it. That's exactly right. Hi, Heather. How are you? Dallas, welcome. It's good to see you. Wow. Let me see who else snuck in here while I was up there staring at the camera here. Oh, Candace, I help rescue animals, and as much as I can. Wow, that is fabulous. That is just wonderful. I love it. And so we're going to have to see how. But this is the point of this whole show, is actually to give us ways, give us some tools, give us some things to really work on, so that we have a better understanding of how to do this. I mean, it's one thing if I were to tell you, okay, you need to take down that wall that you have around you. Okay, so how do I do that? First, I didn't know I had a wall, but now you're telling me I have to take it down, and I don't even know how to take it down. Well, we don't know. We don't have the tools. We haven't been given those tools. We've been taught to live this life that we have been living, with all of the mashugana and all of the problems and all of the drivings that we have. No one's ever told us to just stop. I mean, a very simple concept, but how? How do we do this? I mean, how do we make these changes? So that's why I feel it's important, if this is the direction we can go for a while, to just be able to give you some ideas of how to go about doing this. Linda, in moving into a new country, personal responsibilities has become a key component to daily life. Absolutely, it has. And that is one of the things that we have to do. Yes, Candace, you still have boundaries. And we have to, that's a normal thing. We have to establish boundaries, because that's what allows us to sit back, take a deep breath, smile, and let somebody go on with what their beliefs are. We just don't. And the boundaries that I know that you talk about are not just physical boundaries. These are emotional. These are verbal. These are boundaries that we just don't want to have people go past. And Linda says, knowing that it is okay to say no without a lengthy explanation of why. Absolutely. I mean, people should be able to say that. You should be able to say no, and without having to explain yourself. There are no reasons to do this. Again, in stressing our own point of view, trying to be the one that's right, it's really not important. It's really not important in the whole scheme of things. It's how we react, and mostly the lack of reaction that we have especially the negative reactions to those that wish to be difficult. It is about the easiest way that I can say that. And again, when you finally come to terms with it, and it doesn't matter to me if it's friends, if it's family, don't hang around the difficult people. That really lessens the load. It really does. And understanding that we have guilt, that we tend to want to hold on to guilt, that we link ourselves to the past so strongly that decisions we've made make us feel bad 40 years later. We need to quit that out and stop the guilt. That is not the driving force that we're supposed to be. One of the examples that I gave the other day to a friend of mine that's in New Mexico, and they're heading to Mississippi. I told him that the question was, what do we do? How do we do this? How do we go about getting things squared away? How do I understand where I am, where I'm going, the path that I'm supposed to be on? How do I know that I'm doing things correctly? Well, the whole point of it was, if you see a path that's in front of you, it's not yours, it's somebody else's, and they put you on it to go. And your objective is to get off that path so that where you step, there is no path. You're going to create it with every step that you take. But the important part of it is that when you look behind you, you have left no mark. There's no footprint. And that is the part of how we have to look at our guilt. Every time you take a step away, that previous step no longer exists. It's gone. And so we develop a rhythm, a progression of how we're going to move, until we get to the point again that we say, okay, we're going to step off the path now again, and we're going to go in this direction. And this is the way the path is going to be created. So that is how we should be living our lives, is without fear or regret of the past, because the past no longer exists. It's gone. We have no control over that. It's done. Tomorrow begins when we move our foot forward. When we create our first step, that's tomorrow. And so we live and create our path in the now, which is how we're supposed to live. Let's see, John, we cannot solve our problems with the same level of thinking that created them. Albert Einstein. Absolutely correct, John. I love it. You bring up the great wisdom ones. I think those are great, because that is absolutely true. We got into this mess thinking one way, having a certain line of thinking. And in order to get out of this mess, we have to change our thinking. We have to change. There's no way. Rita says, if you do not react, the other person doesn't know what to do. You're absolutely right. Shuts them right down in their path. And, oh, good. I'm glad you got it back. If things freeze, I know it's just so much fun. I love the technology. And like I said, I really thank Wirecast for allowing us to be able to broadcast globally. But man, I thank my brother Wayne for putting up with all of this stuff, because it is constantly shutting down and going again, and freezing and non-freezing. It's kind of wild. It just gets to be really exciting. Let's see. The way we treat people who strongly disagree with us, we have to learn the compassion, the love, and the kindness. And life is too short to argue and fight, obviously. There are no points to prove or issues to win. Differences of opinion mean there's an opportunity to learn, and knowledge is the wisest option that we can have. So, yeah, when people do disagree with us, that is okay. It's not important. We're not here to prove anything. We're not here to prove anything. So, we'll carry through and see what happens. When someone's going through some difficult times, this would be another way that we can really look at things to try to get it to better understand how to get it to stop. If when people are going through bad times and difficult times, and we do, stop being sympathetic. And this is going to sound a little crass, but let me explain it really. Sympathy focuses on and feeds and puts a spotlight on the suffering. So why continue to reinforce the suffering? it doesn't help anyone by being sympathetic. Compassion, being compassionate, is the way that we handle the things that we really need to deal with people when it really comes when you really think about it. When you look at sympathy, what it does is it provides attention for someone's needs so that they can wallow in the suffering. It helps to justify the suffering and the reason for the suffering. But compassion, on the other hand, that provides a means to the end of the suffering. Compassion provides a means to change the suffering to understanding. And from understanding, we go into acceptance. And with acceptance, the suffering goes away. All you can do is plant the seed. And it's up to the sufferer to allow it to grow. Now, when you really think about the story of it, Jesus didn't sympathize with the people's hunger or their suffering, if you want to look at it that way, by giving a fish. He was compassionate about their hunger or their suffering, and he taught them how to fish. The suffering is gone. So we have to really look at the things that we need to do in a more of a, I'm not going to say compassion is less emotional than sympathy, but I think we have to do it in a constructive manner. In dealing with sympathy, we take ownership. We start feeding the sympathy. We start becoming part of that sympathy or part of the suffering. But with compassion, we do take the suffering and we do change it and make it into an understanding that of why the suffering is occurring. And then we can come up with the ways to stop the suffering. Then that turns into knowledge. Because now we know how to handle that. Now we know how to deal with it. Now we know what it is up front. And again, by planting the seed, we can't make the person accept it. But we most certainly can help them learn to deal with that and stop the suffering completely. But it's totally up to the person, not up to us. And so again, to tie ourselves up emotionally into it and feed the suffering and feed somebody else's problems, we become part of the problem instead of part of the solution. Through sympathy, compassion, we become part of the solution. And that's really the direction that we think we go. What is anybody out there, as far as having had experience with what we're talking about and how you handled it, and what did you do to try to calm the situation down or to settle the problem with suffering? I mean, whether it be dealing with difficult people or whether it is dealing with the concept of sympathy, or just simply removing yourself from the picture of difficult people so you don't have to deal with them. I'd be curious as to see what goes on, because a lot of you out there are working, a lot of you out there are talented. You all deal with this all the time. The healer teaches you how to heal yourself. Exactly. And living your life is no different than anything else as far as that's concerned. We have to understand that we've been living a life that has been laid out for us, that sent us to whatever school they were going to send us to, or our views on politics or religion, or our concepts of how we communicate with friends or with people, or how do we stand up and defend ourselves. These are the things that we have been taught how to do. And I'm just saying that we simply have to start to unlearn them. And as I've referenced it before, a lot of that, we rewind the clock. Go back to a time to when we weren't fearful, when we didn't have all of those issues, to get a feeling of what it was like. And once we can do that, then we have a better handle on what we are, who we are. Because the bottom line is we don't know who we are. We haven't had the opportunity to really face the person in the mirror, at least honestly, because we're not us. We're some fabrication of someone else's ideas. And so bringing ourselves to the forefront, not placing ourselves on the back burner, making sure that we stand up, our primal scream. It is all that important that we learn to start doing this, because we have to find out who we are. We have to really identify that. John, if you want something you've never had, you must be willing to do something you've never done. Thomas Jefferson, absolutely right. Again, these are perfect replies into this. You really do. How? There's always that question. So how do I do that? Yeah, I agree with you. Yep, you're right. I've been tied up with all of this. I've been wrapped up in this reality that I'm finding out isn't so real. I'm finding out that I am not who I really am. And I just need to know, how do I do that? How do I rediscover myself? And again, yes, because all of the tools that we have had to work with don't work anymore, because they are part of the problem. They're part of the situation that we're in. It's until we learn to pick up new tools. And that's part of what we're trying to do here, is give you new tools in order to be able to change your life, to stop letting the difficult person drive you crazy, to not keep yourself surrounded by those that keep you stressed out, to be able to be empathetic, to be compassionate rather than sympathetic, because it's not constructive. It only feeds the situation that's still going on. Rita, yes, John, the house. How else do we come to understand? We must learn to do that something that we have never done. Absolutely right. And we have to find it. Dallas, sympathy is feeling sorry for someone or something, whereas empathy is walking in the person's shoes and helping them grow. I have to agree with you. That is true. It does. That's what empathy does. It places you in a situation so you can understand the person better. But the compassion is what helps them stop. It helps them get out of the situation. Yes, the empathy helps you understand the situation that they are in, and better helps you to then become compassionate so that you can actually take that step and show them what they have to do to learn how to fish. So anyway, another one of the ones I want to go ahead and cover, it's that as we're going through this, honestly, it is not easy. And having done this, it is not easy. This is a very tough process to go through, but it is okay to be upset. Being upset defines your boundaries, as we talked about right at the very beginning with Candace. It establishes for you what you will or will not accept. However, it's never okay to be cruel. Reacting with rage, resentment, jealousy will never change the hearts of others for the better. It'll only change yours for the worse. And there is so much truth in that. That's part of the reason why I want to try to cover these things, because these are the tools that I used to get through all of the same stuff that you guys experience every day. I mean, I've had to go through this. And I've had to learn, getting upset doesn't do a darn thing to help a situation. I mean, it's okay so long as you're not reacting. And that is the part of it that we have to learn to stop doing. So somebody says something to you, you get angry, and we need to stop, because the next reaction is to come back and be insulting, or to shut them down, or to try to prove that they're wrong. And that just adds more stress to the problem. So understanding that, yeah, you can get angry. That's not a problem. I've gotten angry at others. I've gotten angry at myself more than anything else in trying to understand this stuff, and then not being able to get it, and then getting really upset on how can something so simple be so difficult to learn. Until I draw back onto another one of my father's great wisdoms that he used to throw at me. And he always said that if the problem is really a simple problem, the solution to it is almost impossible, is extremely difficult. If the problem is really hard and tough, the solution to it usually is very simple. And he's been proven right. And I know with my dad when he was alive was, he's full of so many of these wisdoms. And I used to laugh at him, but believe me, gotten older, I've taken him to heart because he's been right every time. And I wish he was here so he could know that. And I'm sure he does know that from where he's at. So I think that's really what we have to really realize is that, yes, we're allowed to get angry through all of this. And change is hard, man. Change is the most difficult thing we can ever possibly do. Yes, change is the most common thing that we are going to do because change is so much a part of what it is that we're involved in. But it is the most difficult thing to do because in order to change, we have to admit that that there's a need to, that there's something about us that's not quite right, and that we have to make some changes, or that our life is not the way we wanted it. And so in order to do that, we have to make changes. It's really that simple. And yet change is extremely, extremely difficult to do. Let's see, Candace says, sometimes people play the sympathy card and they have no desire to change. Absolutely. Oh, and that's not our job. Again, that they start to fall into the difficult people group when you really start to think about it, is because they want to wallow in all of this. So they present the suffering and they don't want to let the suffering go. And you can give them show them exactly what needs to be done in order to get out of this whole suffering thing. And they will just blow it all off because that's where they are comfortable. Time vested, time to move on. You can't fix what doesn't want to be fixed. You can lead the horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Well, you can't make people change. You can't make people want to get better. You can't do it. All you can do is present them information. Allow them the opportunity. You can plant the seed, but you can't make it grow. It's up to them to do that. So yes, all of those things it all has to fall into place. The only thing that remains the same, we're always changing. Absolutely right. That's the most common thing. The way I used to say it, if I can remember the way I used to say it, is the only thing you can absolutely count on remaining the same is change. And that is always going to be the way it is. No matter in your life or in your job, that's the way it's going to be. Another thing that we do with ourselves, stop being the victim. Whatever's been done has been done. And that resulted in you believing you became the victim. It's not worth holding on to. Forgive others, not because they deserve the forgiveness, and certainly not because we place ourselves above them. But by holding on to the resentment, you are forever locked and chained to these people as their victim. You are never going to be free from the victimization until you can forgive and remember, learn from it, never place yourself in the position of falling victim again. You can never be free to find your true happiness until you remove the shrouds of the victimization, that victimized feeling. Forgiveness frees you from the chains and the burdens of being an eternal victim. Forgiveness isn't going to change the person. It's not going to touch the person who victimizes, but it is going to change you. And that is forgiveness's sole purpose, is to simply change you. Again, we look at the world, and I've said this so many times, we look at the world and we want to try to do, what can we do to change the world? What can we do to fix the world? Well, look at the world as a difficult person. We can't do anything to change the world. All we can do is change ourselves. And by changing ourselves, walking the talk, living what we are saying, that is the only way the world is ever going to even have a chance at changing. Because The world is nothing but a reflection of us. And based on the way the world is in the situation it's in, we're pretty messed up. And it's going to take every single person, every one of us, to do our part in fixing that, fixing us. And then of course people will then tell you on the other side, the difficult people will then tell you, well, that's awfully selfish of you. Well, it's not being fixed any other way, and we've tried it. We've tried it so many different ways of trying to change the world. Usually ends up in wars somewhere. And so I don't think the way we've done it in the past works. And as John mentioned in the thread, you can't fix a problem with the same thought, same mentality, the same stuff that created the problem. So we really have to look at this differently. Let's see. Rita says, be the example. Candace, forgive. Let's see. What is it? Forgive for yourself, not them. You're absolutely right. And people always say, well, then what about this? What about this circumstance? Here's an example. It doesn't matter, the example. You're not going to change them. You can only change you. And the one thing you can't even see clear, if you're the victim, then you're living a totally defensive life. There's no bringing on any bold. There's no pounding on your chest. There's no standing up for yourself. There's no living your life the way you want to live it. There's no way of playing those cards you were dealt the way you want to play them if you're a victim. It can't be done. It's impossible. It doesn't make sense. So we have to change. We have to do what we do to make ourselves better, to make ourselves more understanding, to recognize now that the person in the mirror is crying for help. It needs to change. It needs to be a help. It needs our help to identify who it really is, and help it to strip away all of these shrouds that we've surrounded ourselves with and covered ourselves with and buried all of that happiness and contentment and all of that we've buried so deep inside that we don't even see we have it anymore. We have to do that. And we can't do it unless we admit, yes, we're a victim. Yes, we have an issue. Yes, I have a problem. And yes, I want to change it, but here's the tools. Here's what we have to do. These are the things that we can actually do to make a difference in our life, to see a change, an immediate change. And like I said, it took me a long time to come up with these because it took me a long time to realize and make some changes, the changes I had to make in my life. Rita says, let's see. Hi, Gina, you're back. Hi. It's like watching reruns of a football game and expecting a different outcome. I love it. Thank you, Rita. That's great. That is perfect here. I think I've done that. We have a big job to do, don't we? Yes, we do. It's a huge job. And because it's us that we have to fix. It's us we have to change. It's us that we have to give the attention to. Because nothing else changes unless we do. I mean, right? Even up to our perceptions. I mean, understanding why we see things the way we see them or why we perceive. And let me throw in an example here of why is, here we'll defend ourselves. Somebody's difficult. They come up, they make their statement. They disagree with what we just said. And now we have to go defend ourselves. That's learning. We were taught to do that. Absolutely taught to do that. And we simply have to unteach ourselves so that we don't do that, so that we don't react, so that we don't become the difficult person. It is not easy. Everybody, we careen through it. And I think why a lot of people don't really do anything to try to get better, to improve themselves. Is a lot of work. And what the heck? I don't really care. This is what I do, and this is how I feel, and this is the way I'm going to go through the rest of my life. And this is what I was taught. Well, and all the power to you. I have no problems with that. You go right ahead. But those that really want to, I really want to do what I can to try to help. That's who I am, and that's what I'm about. Another thing is stay positive. When you're surrounded, with all the negativity. Remember, the positive or the negative are simply perceptions. It's how we are seeing things. It's not so much how we see them. Well, it is how we see them. It's what we see and how we interpret it and define what it is that we see. And a large part of the perception, I mean, that's why when Brian was on the show, was doing the show, he always, I asked him about that as far as, witnesses. You see, I had 5 witnesses to the crime. And how many different stories did you get? At least 5, because it was how they were raised. It was what their belief systems are. It's what they believe is right or wrong. It's what they see as black and white. And everybody is different, so you're going to get different stories, even though it was the same thing. And that is what's so difficult. And we have been so trained to do this. And that one of the examples of the best examples that I had seen was these people had put on this thing to show how we are not focused. We focus on the things right at hand that were being shown, but behind the scenes, things are going on. Like it was like the gorilla came out. How many saw the gorilla? Nobody saw the gorilla. I mean, it simply was, we were watching what these kids were doing or what people were doing, going back and forth, and how many times they did it, and we're trying to count the steps and kind of watch this. And in the meantime, a gorilla walks across the stage and never even saw it. And yet, here witnesses are trying to say, yes, I saw this person commit a crime. What else didn't you see? And there's the part of the problem. So it's perceptions, and our perceptions that's what really is, we define what is true and false in our whole life is based on our perceptions. And our perceptions are based on our 5 senses. And our 5 senses are so limited in their scope. What's right and wrong? What's real and an illusion? We're not in a position to say that. We don't know, because we are too limiting. We tie too much emotion to our entire lives and to everybody else that's around us, and then throw in on that fear, discrimination, hatred. You have a pot that just simply is indescribable, because its life is confusing, to say the least. So what one person sees as a negative, another person can see as a positive. Falling victim to someone's negativity or suffering is the same as providing sympathy instead of compassion. Find a reason within the negative perceptions to smile. When you do this, it sends a message that you're in control and not the perception. It's a simple way to effect a change in yourself. And because we are a reflection of the world around us. Get back to the thread here for a second. Hanging with like-minded people make it easier to stay on track in making our changes. It is true. It is true. But yet it doesn't really make it right. It doesn't make it wrong, because we're still in the process of trying to define who we are, what we're doing. So yes, like-minded people, it does help to do that, and it keeps us away from the difficult people where we have a challenge trying to deal with that. So in the process of trying to take back control of our lives, so that we are the ones now in control instead of our perceptions or the other person. We're not the victim anymore. I think hanging with like-minded people does help for the time being. But at some point in time, we do have to venture out there, and we do have to experience it. We have to walk the talk. Well, walking the talk with like-minded people doesn't really teach us anything. But walking the talk with people that are difficult or people that don't agree with us, now they get to see who we really are, and we get to see how they react to us now instead of we reacting to them. It's sort of taking the role back. I'm the victim, and you were the one that was the controller. Well, now I'm the controller of me. Now, if you want to take the victim side back, you go right ahead. But I'm not going to do to you what you did to me. That's not the point. The point is I get to drop the victim and I get to bring on the controller. And that's the whole point of what we need to do to bring our own bold, is to become the controller of our own lives. John says, some belief systems have allowed the worst hatred, fear, and intolerance in the world. Oh, absolutely. I mean, totally. And the religious quarters are the biggest perpetrators of that. And that is one of the problems that I have with, quote unquote, with religion. It is really difficult it's very hard to not put the blame on churches, religious institutions. Let's put it that way, because it's across the religions where the problem lies. And you're right. It's those belief systems that really have created the worst things in the world and created the most hatred. That's where a lot of this comes from. And it's when you start to go back, when you start to look back, you go back to when you were a child, and of course you get those things where, well, I would, if you had an unhappy childhood, would go back, keep going back until you can find a place where you remember that you were happy and content and you loved unconditionally. And in the healing world, we get to do a lot of this and really work with it. And being an energy worker, we get to go back in time, go back to other time periods in either our lives or a client's life, to try to bring back to the present what was left behind energetically in previous times. And so it's a great experience, and it's a great way to really pull people back and get them together again and make them whole, because it's hard to be whole if you're missing a piece. And so we do that, and it does really help. But the hatred that goes around institutions, look at the political institution, the political belief system, if you want to really look at it, because everybody believes we have to have that. We have to have the government. We have to have the political system. I happen to not be one of those people that believe that. I'm sorry. I just believe that if we were able to be who we are, who we know, we have to find out who we are, and we have that faith in ourselves. Excuse me. And we trusted, and we didn't hate and discriminate. We didn't have the separation. We had the unity to pull us all together again, where we could see each other as brothers and sisters, as family. There wouldn't be a need for government. The only reason we have government is because we have people that just simply are selfish. They want it their way. And I don't care if it's a dispute over your home property boundaries. I don't care if it's they stole something from you. I don't care if it's they broke the window of your car, or they just simply wouldn't allow you to build a home that has the same exterior as the neighbor next door. That's why we have to have a government, because we're so petty that we don't know any better. And that's why the government's there. But we've been made this way. This is why it's created, and that's what keeps the governments going. That's what keeps the need for it to be there. And so we are the ones that have created the situations that we are in. And we are the ones that are going to be able to get ourselves out of these situations. So it's just how. And these are the things that I'm trying to let you know now. Candace says, John, everyone has their own morals and values. But yes, they've been taught to us, though. When you really look at it, Candace, every moral, every value has been taught to us. Doesn't make it wrong. Doesn't make it right. They've been taught to us, and they've been taught to us in different manners. I mean, your values as a person that sits in a church is different than the values of those that belong to a terrorist group. I tried to explain on how morals and values are very much defined based on what we believe as right or wrong. So to sit here and take somebody's head off, we'd probably find that rather immoral and probably not a right thing to do. But until the 1950s, right in the Amazon here, headhunting was a way of life. It wasn't even seen. It wasn't seen as good or bad. It was simply, it was justice. It was they killed one of your tribal members, and so you went and took their spirit from them, the head. So it depends on. You're right. It's different for everybody, and so we have to look at that as if part of our changing, part of our need to let go, to stop all of the stuff that we have done all of our lives and start to question that. Is that really the way it should be? Because again, I've had to go through all of this and had to question everything that I've had to do. John says we have to stop focusing on what is right and wrong and start focusing on what works and what doesn't work, given what it is we are trying to do. Yep. I see. Candace says, I believe totally different now than was taught. Well, you're right, and we do, and we are still, but yet we still cling to these old teachings, these teachings that we went through, and we can't help that. That's part of being human. It's part of who we are, because we have no baseline except what we've learned to base decisions on, to decide what is right or wrong. Is there right or wrong? The Taoists don't believe there's a right or a wrong. It just is. And so when they walk down a path and they look to the right for what's right and the left for what's wrong, they just simply see what's going on the right and what's on the left. They make sense of whatever it is that's going on, and they try to maintain the balance. That's the whole job. And there is no right or wrong. So again, it's all matter of the way we were raised and how are we going to establish the values. Again, another term we were taught that makes it work or not work, as John says. So, is it real? Is it Memorex? It's what we have to do in order to make the changes in ourselves so that the world will then now change. But we can't establish what's right or wrong for the world either, because now we're doing the same thing that was done to us. We're trying to teach it. We're trying to show, to let it learn from us. So we have people that we have learned from throughout our past, as our parents learned throughout their past, and ad nauseum as it goes back. And from all of that, we have to say, wow, we need to start over. We need to simply just stop all this and start over. Establish a whole new baseline. Establish a different criteria as to who and what we are and why we are. And because we have to realize that what we think is right was either parentally taught to us, religiously taught to us, educationally taught to us, politically taught to us, corporately taught to us. And if I say the churches are wrong, then anything you learned in the church, you shouldn't be dealing with it. It shouldn't be part of your life. So we have to really look at that. And that doesn't make me right, by the way. I just use that as an example. And like I said, I don't believe in that. We need a government. I think people are supposed to be able to work and understand together, to be for the greater good. That doesn't require a government. That requires common sense. Again, another taught program for us. So yes, is it confusing? Absolutely it is confusing. And is it the way we have to live? If we want to make sense of this world, if we really want to see a change, yes, we do have to start living it. We have to start walking the talk. We have to start stopping is about the best way I can put it. We have to start stopping. Stop. Assess. Take a look. Try to figure this out. See what is going on. Stop reacting. And then learn. And that's the only way I've known how to go through this, is to just simply now stop and listen and learn keep my mouth shut, because when I'm talking, I'm not listening. And when I'm not listening, I'm not learning. And that's how come I deal with the difficult people. That's why I can deal with the compassion instead of the sympathy. That's why I can deal with those types of things, because I simply stop and allow it to continue to bring in more information and more data. John says, what works? Works what? Doesn't work. Change it. What works? Works. What doesn't work? Change it. Exactly. And like I said, it fits into everything that we're doing. Now, we're winding down to what we have, about 4 minutes left, I guess, 5 minutes maybe. Any questions? You guys, post if you've got. Like I said, I don't want this to be a one-way thing. I don't like sitting here preaching to you and then you having to accept or fight or argue what this is. Please, I appreciate the correspondence that's going through, but if you have questions, put them in the thread, send them to me in the email, do whatever you need to do. But I'm here to help. I'm willing to help, and not just sit here and spit all this stuff out. I'm here to try to really get you to learn and to understand and to really look at life differently and the world differently and yourself differently, looking at me differently, looking at Brian differently, because we have to. What goes on now does not work. And it's up to us to make those changes. It's up to us to make them happen. So yeah, I appreciate all the comments that are coming in. Tomorrow I'm going to go ahead and see what I'm going to continue this, by the way, tomorrow night. I'll continue. I still have some more of these I want to go through. If you don't mind, if it does bother you, or you do mind, then let me know and we'll change it. But I have several different programs that I want to go through to try to get some of the understanding of the things you can do to make a difference in your life. It is going to be difficult. I can't stress that enough. I really can't. I mean, I went into it thinking it was a joke. It's no joke. This is serious stuff. And it really wears on you. And you start to question, why in the world am I doing this? Well, you're doing it ultimately because you want a better world. You want a peaceful world. You want a loving world. It ain't going to happen until I do it, until you do it, until every one of us does it. Then the world starts to change because we do. And so that is the story for this evening. Let's see, John. You said, let's see, what's the best way to get folks to start stopping? Is hesitate. Every time when you come up, it's okay, when dealing with a difficult person, as I said, don't throw your 2 cents in there to try to prove yourself right. All you're trying to do is prove them wrong, and that's not what you want to do. You're not here to blow your own horn. That's not our point. That's not our purpose here. Our purpose is to simply stop. Okay, listen to what they have to say. I mean, I usually go about doing that, and what I'll usually do in people that totally disagree with me, or that I'm totally in disagreement with, will be, listen, I have obviously a different point of view, but I would like to understand yours a little bit better. Could you please explain this a little bit more? I got all the time in the world you want. I really would like to understand your point of view. Please explain it to me. It's very non-threatening. It takes their guard down, and they open up and start to talk to you. And now from that, I can pull in their data. But remember, when you're judging their data, you're judging it based on your upbringing. You're basing it on all of the perceptions you have now that would have to change. So that's why I'm saying, by listening to someone else's point of view, you're allowing yourself an opportunity to collect data that may not make sense today, and you may not like it. You may not want to even deal with it today. But down the road, as you change, things from it may make sense. So to me, the first thing is stop. Just simply stop talking, listen. Stop walking, pay attention to what's going on around you. Stop being sympathetic. Stop the sympathy. Bring on the compassion. I think we got to wind it down. I think we're just about out of time. I want to thank everybody for your being here. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the shares. Thank you for the likes. Thank you for everything that you've done for me. I appreciate it while Brian is basking in his bed, I think. I thank you for your time and your attention. I totally do appreciate everything that you have done for me. And believe me, I'll do everything I can to help you too. So with that, I will say good night and thank you. And tomorrow, same time, and we'll just go ahead and carry over for the rest of this, okay? Thank you, everybody. I hope you all have a great evening and a pre-happy Monday to you. Thank you.
IPMNation.com.